I'm gonna rewatch
Okay.
my clip.
Yeah, we'll do that. We can upload them on private and just send them out in the mail. Be like, hey, here's that clip if you want to see how it looked from Carrie's POV or whatever. Um, Great thing about that is you can't lie about what you did well and what you did bad. So basically, things that I did well. Um, was pretty patient with baiting out the fight, even though I thought for sure we were gonna get blue balled. Notice the Mermanin dropped guard ones, which is good, which means I can risk getting tackled by him as long as I have some reps, because they won't track worth much. So called the reps in, had them warp at a smart range where they'd still be able to rep me without being in too much danger from the Gila. But the problem is I kept burning in like a full orbit pattern. So even though I warped you guys in at a good range, I was continually burning out, and I wasn't really positioning well. So essentially for you guys, it was kind of a clusterfuck when you landed, because I was probably like, I wanted reps, but you guys had to burn through them or sit there and do nothing.
Yeah.
So that wasn't good. But then,
We needed to get closer to them to get to you.
yeah, exactly. So I positioned poorly. I should have peeled to one side and prepped for the fight to take off. I didn't. I said that I did well tackling. I didn't do well setting up the position for the retributions. Because quite frankly, it's kind of hard to do. I was flying that carries like an interceptor to bait out the fight, and then I forgot to switch back to like, hey, we're in retributions, fly carries now. The Gila came up. I got super close to the Gila several times because he wouldn't aggro me inside of 10k, so I like drove by him at 2k, and eventually went for it, and I got point on him. As soon as I had point on him, I did a pretty bad job keeping the Merm tackled. That's why he worked out in low structure. Wah, wah, wah. But kept the Gila tackled, called you guys in at what I think was a good range. You guys landed okay off the Gila, right?
Just
Yeah, we
fine.
landed pretty good
Yeah.
off the Gila. I set up an orbit on 30 at him and just kind of rained on him.
So, yeah, one of the things that's bad about that is as soon as you guys landed, we should have called the line and stayed grouped. Because that's literally the only way for that fleet to remain effective. It lowers your transversal as a fleet, but it's the only way to make sure your projection is good.
And it helps the Inquisitors because if you're spread out, it's just too much work for them to
Exactly.
try
It
to
also
burn to
helps
you to rep you and
in
then burn to somebody
mitigating the drone damage as well. So
How so?
that burning in a straight line, on and off their micro warp drives.
No, actually, no. Elliptical, it works a little bit better.
Well, true.
But I mean, to that point, if the drones were really an issue, we could instantly reload close range ammo and blap even Gila drones really quickly. So you're right. I just think not necessarily for those reasons. But yeah, so what we should have done there is if we came in, somebody should have let me know, like, okay, good range, let's start deep seeing the Gila. And then we should have said, all right, stay sunside. Which I did say, I just waited until it was already a bit of a clusterfuck to call that. Other than that, like, I fucked up my orbit at one point. I approached the Scorpion. I was literally sitting 1k off the Scorpion for a long time. And because we were spread out, I was having a very, very difficult time identifying targets we could project onto. So I sort of had to sleep in the bed I made earlier in that fight by not saying where to be. Lucky, I'm going to pass it to you because you fucked up pretty hard at one point. You did a lot of things well, don't get me wrong, but I'm going to harp on the one thing that I saw, which is that you were taking heavy damage from, I think, like a Harbinger, maybe? Several things, probably.
Yeah.
And then you started burning out, and when you started burning out, you went straight onto the Scorpion. I don't know if you're chasing somebody to rep them, which is entirely possible, or what.
Yeah, I was.
Okay.
I was trying to get in range because I was 48 off somebody who called for a rep.
Okay.
Don't remember who, because it was like 4 or 5 who asked, so I just put approached and started burning, and then you started shouting.
Yes. But here's the reason I started shouting at you is, hypothetically, whoever was taking damage, like, probably a 75% chance they weren't tackled, and they could have bounced out. But they didn't know how far off you were, and you didn't really know their situation, so it's kind of one of those things where you just got to do your duty and burn out. But to that end, if it comes to saving yourself or saving one of us, you got to save yourself in that scenario. That's why I was shouting at you to burn down. And I just kind of pieced together you were burning out to rep somebody, but if it means it's probably going to get you killed and leave our other Logi stranded with just a buffer tank, then you guys have to take care of each other before anybody else. And you can just call that. You can call I have to kite off. Bouncing out is really not ideal when you can kite, and I think there you had room to kite off a bit if you hadn't have been as committed to repping people as you were.
Yeah, I thought that was all good. Then somebody landed a web for a second or two, and my stopped up, and a newt, so I stopped up totally.
Yeah, that was the Scorpion. I did the same shit.
Yeah.
So I got you.
So then I was
Then you were what?
so then I was dead after 4 more seconds or so.
Yeah, I mean once you weren't moving, I can totally understand that. The other Logi did a really good job of burning down, though. I mean, we like to be clear. I mean, I put us in a really bad position early in that fight. We were not fighting to the advantage of the fleet. Everybody, I think, was using their range pretty effectively, and the Logi was doing a great job burning between people that were broadcasting. But we flew that like we would fly like rail cormorants or rail comets. We didn't fly that like beam retributions. Anybody else have stuff? What happened with the micro warp drive? What was that all about?
When I was trying to burn away from the, I think it was the Ortrus, I had to overheat my MWD and the burning out, and then you were going down, and I had to bounce because I was in 20% structure.
Gotcha.
And I couldn't get in range with you. I was 50 off from you.
Okay. Well, I didn't even realize your MWD was burnt. And then Mirakai warped back on grid in a noob ship. It was you, right?
Yeah, it was.
Okay, and then you sent me a mail after like, my bad.
I felt bad.
I mean, that was pretty bad. But again, it was bad in the sense that it really didn't impact anything. It's just right then I did not want to look down and see a court member had gone to station, grabbed a noob ship, and warped back in. But it was okay. It didn't affect anything. I just, it was a good opportunity for me to yell at something I noticed.
Sounds good.
What else was there? Dantessi, good job with patience at the end and realizing like if you have aggro and you're not in trouble, why not just sit there and tank it? That was smooth.
I learned how to kite from Exodus.
It's not saying much. Let's see. Everybody did a really good job committing DPS. Like, was it a retribution? Yeah, it was. There at the end, that retribution. Just fucking erased.
No, it was the Vengeance.
Vengeance.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Vengeance.
Vengeance. As soon as you
How-
were thinking that you were going to go down to him, it was instantly scraped and dead.
Well, no, he didn't get scraped. He sat at 10 and Gleam fucking just alphaed him. Like, he
Yeah.
tanked the Gleam damage.
Oh, he was active tank. Yeah, no wonder he got dunked. He didn't even get off an ancillary cycle. Yuck, yuck, yuck. That was good though, and also the Orthrus. Like, that's part of the reason I say there was a lot to talk about there with target calling. I'll give myself a pat on the back for this one because I realized we were kind of spread out, but we were actually making it work for us, and I expected the grid to thin because they weren't trading well. And on that note, how fucking impressive is the survivability of those things with no plate? It's good, right?
It's really damn good.
It's really fucking impressive. The links are what made
the
it. But
Orthers took me down to like 10%, and then the larger fucking hero saved me after I burned out.
yeah, and something like an Orthrus is about as dangerous as it can get, but for having no plate whatsoever, literally one hardener and no damage control, like, pretty beast. But the Logi were also on point. Seriously, to Lucky and Star, though, you guys kicked ass. And to the briefly lived third Logi.
Actually, second time I doing Logi, so.
Well, for what it's worth, you guys did a fantastic job. It's a role that like everybody expects everything out of, but it's very, very difficult, so don't hesitate to fly in the future. You guys did a great job, and it's a valuable thing to have. But back to what I was saying, about a lot of stuff to talk about there. The target calling, like at the end, yeah, as I've said multiple times, we kind of let it, or I kind of let it turn into a clusterfuck, but I expected them to be leaving because they weren't trading very well. And that Orthrus was obviously kiting us around. I was a little frustrated at our inability to catch him, but his speed relative to ours is just way too high. And if we overheat to catch him, our mods burn out a lot faster than his. So I wasn't super pumped. Like, I was happy to either get all of us away or get all of us onto him. And it looked like he was pretty competent. I was having a hard time trying to track him down and get a scram on him. But
So he was the one that made the mistake.
Sort of. Like, it actually, several of you did exactly what I was afraid you would do, and I said, okay, let's burn up to the gate, and you right-clicked and clicked where approach would be, and it's actually warped to. So you warped up to the gate, which you definitely should not have done. So like half of our fleet was within...
Warped up.
Well, only 2 or 3 people actually warped, but there were a lot of you that
Guilty.
were already up toward the gate, right? That's why I said double click in space, don't right click. Because if you right click, instinct is going to put you on that warp button. So a lot of people warped up to the gate. A lot of people were fairly close to the gate already, just because we're sort of reforming from the clusterfuck. And then it was like me, Star, and a handful of other people in the back. And I was content burning up to the gate until, who was it that called Star out for being too far back? Dantessi?
That was me.
Oh,
That
okay,
would've been-
Ateris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yes.
basically, as soon as Ateris called, like, Star, you're way too far back, at that point I didn't know your MWD was burnout. But I
No,
saw...
that's when I started overeating my MWD.
Oh,
because
that
I
makes
noticed
sense.
the Orthrus.
Okay, so I noticed you were in the back, and I was like, this Orthrus is gonna fucking go for him. Just because of the way you were positioned, like if I was in an Orthrus, I would get a comfortable point on you and murder you in the back. So as soon as I realized I was ahead of you and you looked isolated, I immediately turned and pre-overheated my scram and went straight for the Orthrus because I knew he'd be coming in, and that's when I got him. I barely got him too. And then I had to ask you guys to burn all the way back out. So those people that had warped up to the gate were completely ineffective with that Orthrus for, a solid 20 seconds. And then the other people, make sure with the laser boats in a scenario like that, when you're at 40, you should have Aurora loaded and be slamming them. And then, once you get to 15, reload because it's instantaneous. So constantly be applying into your optimal, because there's no reload time, which is something I'm not used to with lasers after having not used them for years.
I like it. It's fucking amazing.
It's good. You just got to have the presence of mind to realize, like, okay, we're doing an all DPS rush. You shouldn't be loading multi-frequency at 35k, right? You should still have your Aurora up until the point where you're in optimal for another crystal. So we lost DPS from those people that warped up. Not that big of a deal. But if you guys had been out there, and again, this is a hypothetical, it's not a guilt thing, but just as an example of how important something like that can be, if you guys had been out there, A, it would have been a little bit less dicey killing the Orthrus, because we probably could have nuked him like one more newt cycle shy, but B, we probably could have then killed that Vengeance in time for me to bounce out. So, I mean, honestly, 2 Retributions warping up to the gate probably was the difference between me surviving and me dying. It was hashtag worth all the way through, but that's just one of those times where you can look back and be like, well, if I didn't do this, there's a direct result that we could have gotten out of it. And maybe I was fucked anyways. I think I might have been long pointed by the Vagabond, but so yeah, basically that's one of those scenarios where I kind of regained my presence of mind once we were all in a straight line burning up to the gate, and I saw Star looking all juicy in the back, and I made the decision as an individual to go back. Now, normally, if I were one of the Retributions in the front and you had been in my shoes and you had turned back for that Orthrus, I would have bitched at you. Like, not a doubt in my mind, I would have bitched at you. But occasionally, like, depending on how comfortable you are with it and how well you read the situation, it's worth it. And if you do it and you fuck it up, I'm gonna bitch at you. It's just gonna happen. If you do it and succeed, I'm gonna bitch at you all the way up to the point where you call scram. Which several of you have had that happen before. I'll start bitching at you and then it'll turn out okay, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine. Because it just happens. It doesn't make sense for you to be burning back toward him, but if you got the cojones and you're comfortable enough with the situation, then you do what you do. I'm not buying your all ships. I'm not your father. I can't tell you what to do. But yeah, that was risky. I'm glad it worked. Anything else from that fight? So, who wants to? Dale. Dale, I'm gonna nominate you. What
For
if you have to pick one thing that we need to do better with that meta next time? What would it be?
it's a bit hard to say. I think where we spread around way too much, which basically the situation warranted it because we landed a kind of strange in terms of they also were all over the field. But trying to keep a tiny bit more grouped up so we could apply similarly and a lot easier to targets.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And then as an extension of that, I'm not. God, I sound super patronizing asking this, but I'm curious if it's crossed people's mind. But what would I'm trying to think how to phrase this. What's something that we could focus on doing that would allow us to group easier? Like, how can we make that happen that we didn't do there? And literally anybody, I'm calling Dale up. Go ahead, Ataris.
Just have someone call a point in that position. Like, you're trying to FC what targets to call, so you're not in optimum position to call us in a line. So just pick like the sun as just an always aligned 2-point. Really, I don't. Like that's not always the
necessarily
best.
as an alignment, but try to stay sun side of the enemy. For example,
Yeah.
like if the situation warrants it, of course. If fucking whole fleet lands on sun side, that's not optimal. We would want to go to the other side. Just generally look at where the guys are, where like if you really have a calm mind, you can look where the celestials are and try to keep on the other side so that they can't easily warp on top of us. But if you're kind of tunnel visioning, just look for the largest blob of purple and try to like kind of stay with that blob.
Well, and to touch on both of those points, like, I guess one of the things I'm trying to dig out of somebody is if I agree again, like calling an align point. I think for now just keep it basic. I mean, you don't really have to worry about people warping in on you, and if you do, you're already pre-aligned and everybody can bail out. So I think picking something super simple so that we don't spend too much time swinging our cameras around in space. We can just click on something and align.
What about oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
What about designating a couple of fleet members as basically anchor boats that not necessarily you want to constantly be orbiting them the entire fight, but they would be a good point that if everybody needs to group up real quick, we can designate a few guys to just orbit up around real quick and then go back to your aligns.
I think what would be a better use of that person is to have somebody whose job within the fleet is to always call the align point. Like, regardless of what I do. For instance, if in the middle of the fleet, like, I'm flying at carries. Yeah, I can only do so much to predict what you guys need in Retributions. Now, if we're all right next to each other, like we were in Amara, then fine, I can call it. But what would be good is to say, like, okay, Ataris, whenever the fight starts, you call the align. And then even if I'm FCing, if I'm in something like a carries, and this is sort of getting to the heart of the matter, is if we effectively called an align in a fight like that, what's a natural consequence of moving in one direction together?
Not getting the other people away from each other so they hit harder. Also.
True, possibly. I mean, that's assuming they can all operate on the same DPS range.
Are you talking about negative
Weapons?
consequences or
No, I'm talking
positive?
about, well, it's sort of neutral in a way. What's something that would become much simpler for us if we were all on the same side?
Picking targets.
Target calling by range.
Yeah.
But I guess that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm after. That's part of what we suffered from there. I mean, fuck, I'm 30 kilometers on one side of somebody, half our retributions are 20 kilometers on the other side. Like, there's no, at any given point, no matter who I called in that fight, half of our fleet would have been ineffective. So
what I want to say is like what we did very effectively, or the thing was the grid was completely fucked where they all were randomly placed.
Mhm.
The Orthers were burning around us, the MOA was like 100 off, and that was just a complete clusterfuck. But when we like cleared the Executor and cleared the Scorpion on that ship, we actually grouped up very nicely.
yeah, that was good. And see, and again, I mean, it's sort of chicken or the egg, but we all grouped from good target calls. Or vice versa. When we grouped, there were good target calls. And it is a two-way street in a lot of ways. But, if we're all on one side, it makes it really easy. Whereas if I'm in, kind of close to the Orthrus, I'm tempted to call it, but he's moving 3K away. Fuck that, dude. Nobody has time for that. Nobody can zoom out far enough or process enough moving parts to call effectively. So, and again, I mean that's on me. I have literally never in my life flown this meta before. This is like brand new, so I'm in it with you guys. I just think the most important points from this, if we're going to take away, I guess two things is really all I'd emphasize, is that we need to stay in a similar direction. Like we need to kite as a group, not just kite. We kite in other hulls. These we need to kite as a group. And B, we need to call targets as a result of kiting. We need to call targets defensively first and foremost, and then once the fight is won. It's really painful for like me, and I think for everybody, to see targets warp off in low armor and low structure. Like the Myrmidon warped off, the Scorpion warped off. I mean, that sucks. That's hard. But if we sustain no losses and we still pick up a couple kills here and there, boom. Like, it's still worth it. And even if we don't pick up the kills, you're going to go in with a couple of Retributions and take on a 12-man fleet of battleships and shit. I'll take it with no kills on either side.
Just that said, after that Gila fleet we had, where we had like 3 Gilas and Shrapnels and shit, and several Caracal fleets we had, were kind of near to cut and shit, I was pleasantly surprised by how well everyone fought it today.
I couldn't be more happy about it. Like, I'm glad people fucked up. And hopefully people can understand why that is. If we go in and we just, like that first fight where they didn't even look at us, we just go in and nuke a couple of frigates, you're not going to learn fuck all from that. So we needed to go in and we needed to fuck up, and next time I'm going to remember, like, hey, don't tell people to just orbit shit. We need to be on one side.
I think that fight was really nice in that we weren't suspect when we took that, so the other dudes didn't want to engage on us. So we could limit how much incoming DPS we had.
Which is exactly, sorry to interrupt, but that's exactly the reason that, A, we don't take needless suspects. I mean, if a kill's really nice, by all means, but if it's a T1 cruiser or a T1 BC, and you're talking about pausing a roam and pausing your options for 15 minutes for a 50 mil kill mail, I lapsed earlier with that Ishkur, but that's why I don't do that. It's not that I don't like kill mails, and it's not that I can't buy sex status tags, but you give up options.
Ishkur was worth it.
And, sorry, Lucky, did you have something?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say that for first thing running Logi, the hardest thing was that they were going to apply from a good range and you were stuck in the middle. So in every engagement, really, we did need to run to you, from you, don't get caught.
Yeah.
But it was a good experience. I need to log off. I had fun. I will probably try Logi again.
Good.
I'm like 1.5 hours over my time, so.
Well, thanks for sticking around, dude. Hopefully it was worth it. See ya.
See ya, Loki.
Yeah.
User disconnected from your channel.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so just to restate, the two things we need to do better is we need to position more cohesively and target call accordingly, and not get too caught up in closing out the kill mail. Like, we shouldn't give in to, at least my baser instincts, to when somebody gets low and it looks like they're trying to run, to turn around and burn right into them to make sure you kill them. Like, we can't get away with that here. It puts way too much stress on the Logi. Somebody gets caught and then we can't peel back out. So we need to play more defensively for sure.
Don't sacrifice yourself for the fleet for a kill now.
Yeah, exactly.
Head back to Omar.
We can start moving now.
Yeah, the reason I called for didn't seem like people were going close range. I called that for the Orthrus because that was very much needed. That's the only, there's few places where you should do it, and I just saw the opportunity there.
That was a really good call, and that was something I didn't specify. I just said get in on it, but if people would have sat at 40 and applied half the DPS then I probably would have been capped out or dead by the time it came to it. But I'm tickled pink. That meta, we need to be careful with that meta. We do not want to run that into the ground.
Also, not taking plexus. Like that was definitely. This doesn't excel if you have to dive in on plexus.
It's
if you
a
have to deny.
No, it's a total mobility fleet. I mean, your tank is like non-existent, right? It's just resist. It's for those glancing blows, and then the logic can rep you right back up to the next glancing blow. It's if you get hit right in the face, you're gonna die. Which is part of the reason they're perfect, honestly.
Yeah, we need to do more mobility stuff like this because it's awesome for everyone to just learn where you should be at all times, no matter what ship size, basically.
And I mean, solo can play into this a big part, because in a kiting fleet, you are a solo pilot. Like in a brawling fleet, not so much. You got mod management, but you don't have range management in a brawling fleet because everybody's locked down. So feel free to like try it solo, or more importantly, duo. I think duo and trio roaming and kitey shit is definitely where it's at.
When we get up to these, 8 to 12 man gangs, it's basically absolutely necessary to run with links.
I disagree.
Depending on what ships you run.
Yeah, so the thing tonight is we run with no plates. So we really need to milk the resist, and then more importantly, the sig radius. That's honestly what saved us from most of this.
Yeah,
the Orthus
I would have
especially.
died hadn't it been for links.
Yeah.
I was hyena webbed, and the Arthurs were shooting me, and I went 700. What the fuck am I saying? 1700 meters a second heated, even when webbed. So
Yeah.
that was just awesome.
So we got to be careful with it. This is a meta that will not expand out particularly well beyond about a dozen people. Like tonight was really, really good, mix-wise. Don't ever run it with more than like 2 Logi, in my opinion, because if you run Logi heavy, you're kind of defeating the purpose of the fleet, quite frankly.
Yeah, it's like the Cyclones. You don't want to do like a 12-man Cyclone gang. Like,
No.
it's not going to work for you.
We're going to burn through war target space, by the way.
In frigates.
I have precious cargo.
I'm going through in a noob ship, so if anything, I'll spot them out. I don't think they're on at this time at all.
Oh, just call it.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody should have their eyes on local. But do we have should we? How do people feel like the educational? I'm gonna cut the thing, by the way, the feed.